In this video, I'm going to go over print basics. I'm going to show you inside of Adobe Illustrator, but what I'm showing you will apply to almost any program that you want to print from. If you're in the classroom, never do the following. Don't pause printing. So if you send something to the printer and you're like, oops, don't hit this little button that looks like or says pause, because it can mess with the network in the classroom and then no one will be able to print from that computer until it gets fixed. Don't scale your print, and I'll talk more about that towards the end of the video. And don't just keep printing and printing, keep pressing the print button if you're not getting a printout. Please call the instructor over to assist you with that. Here's some do's in the classroom. Do make sure you know which artboard you want to print from if you have multiple artboards, so you don't end up wasting paper, and also make sure that you sent to print at the proper size paper. Pretend that we're ready to print right now and we want to print from this artboard. First thing we want to do if we have multiple artboards is figure out which artboard it is that we want to print from. And an easy way to do that is when you click on an artboard, down near the bottom will tell you what that artboard number is. So if I click here, it tells me this is artboard number 3. So then I'm going to go File, Print, and then when this print dialog box opens up, I first want to make sure I have the right printer selected. Most of the time, if you're in a classroom, there's going to be multiple printers. If you're just printing something that's not important, send it to the black and white printer. If you're printing something that needs to go to the color printer, make sure that that's what's selected. So that will be under this option right here. And of course, if you need help figuring that out in the classroom, call the instructor over. Never print more than one copy at a time unless you have a very good reason for doing so. And then by default, artboards is going to be set to all, which means if I printed right now, I would waste 4 sheets of paper to get just the one printout that I need here. So what I want to do is check range. Now, if you only have one artboard, you don't have to worry about this. But if you have multiples, and then you want to make sure that the right number is in there. And a way to make sure is look at this preview. And if it looks wrong, then get out of here. Click cancel, and then figure out, nope, it was artboard number 3 that I wanted. And then now that looks good. All right. Now, media size. This is important. Don't let the classroom printer decide what page to print on. You need to tell it which page to print on. And it's not always real obvious. It doesn't just jump out and say 8.5 by 11. So in this case, it's US letter. I'll tell you some of the things that you'll see in here. For 11 by 17 paper, you'll probably see the word tabloid. If you're using oversized paper from an Epson printer, you're probably going to have to learn that in the classroom, because it might be called one of 3 different names. But if it's just tabloid or letter, it's usually pretty easy to figure that one out. Never ever scale your print, because if you do, it's not going to give you the design that you spent all the time designing. So there's never a reason as a graphic designer to scale something. It just ends up leading to confusion. So make sure that says do not scale, and then you should be good to go. And then at this point, if you're maybe it's your first time, you just want the instructor to see that you've done everything right, and it's going to take a while, you can click done instead of cancel or print. If you click cancel, it's going to go back to how it was set up before. If you click print, of course, it's going to print. If you click done, it'll remember this. So now you could go on, do something else, come back here, file, print, and your last settings are still active in here. Now I want to talk about another topic that has to do with printing, and that is trying to print to the edge. So let's say I wanted to print this page, and I wanted exactly what I see in here to print. And in fact, just to make what I'm trying to tell you a little bit clearer, we can go up to View, and we can go to Trim View. And now that shows us what I would be hoping to get out of the piece of paper that I print on. Now, maybe you already know this, but most of the time you're not going to get that. Most printers cannot print right to the edge of the document. So what would end up happening is I would get something at the top that looked more like this on the actual piece of paper. Just want to put pure white in there. So when it comes out of the printer, oh, I have that on the wrong layer. Let's do that. Okay, so it would look like that. There would be part of it missing. So how do you get around that? Well, first of all, let's understand what's happening. You're using a machine. It has to pull the paper through, so it usually has an area all around the edge that it cannot print on. There are a few printers on the market that will allow full bleed printing, but most people that I've talked to that own them say they're trouble. And it's exactly for that reason, is because the machine has a harder time pulling the paper through, and a lot of times the paper shifts as it's going through the machine, so you end up getting a mess. Now, if you ever want to know how far can I print, as long as your computer is hooked up to a printer, you can go in here, make sure you have the right printer selected. So we would first go File, Print, and if you have multiple printers to choose from, of course you're going to want to set this to the printer that you're wondering how far you can print on. And then click Done once it's set up. And then you can again go up to the View menu, and from the View menu you will select Show Print Tiling, which should be down towards the bottom here, right here. And I have to get out of this mode that I was in for trim view, so I'll go back over this, uncheck that, and now when I zoom in here I should see the print. And what will show up here is a little dashed line, and that means that anything outside of that dashed line will not print. Now, this may not work for you if you're using a wireless computer configuration where you didn't have to download drivers, but on the school, the college's systems, it should work fine for you. So then the next question is, well, what do I do if I want to print something that needs to go all the way to the edge, and it is, in this example, 8.5 by 11? What do I do? Well, you're going to have to be able to go up to the next print size, right? And as a graphic designer, you always have to be able to design within your means. Now, if you're doing this for a commercial job, then of course you'll be able to get anything done at a commercial printer. But if you need to do this, let's say you're making a resume and the biggest size you can print on is 8.5 by 11, then you're just going to have to deal with the fact that your end design that you want to go what's known as full bleed all the way to the edge cannot be done on 8.5 by 11. So as a compromise, maybe your resume becomes 8 by 10.5, right? But if you're in a situation where you need 8.5 by 11 and you can go up to the next paper size, then here's how you would do this. What you first want to do is turn on bleeds. So we're going to go to File, Document Setup, and we're going to turn on the bleed. We're just going to uptick it 1 to 1/8 of an inch, which is 0.125, which is pretty much the standard in printing, commercial, or even just in the classroom. Works perfect. We're going to click OK, and the first thing that we're going to do is make sure that anything that goes to the edge of the document now goes beyond the edge. So this goes to the edge. We want it to go out to the bleed. So I'm going to do that on all 4 corners of this design. And because this color is so close to the background color, just for demo purposes, I'm going to make it a much brighter color. Now, step number 2 is we want crop marks, because once we print this thing out, we're not going to know where to cut here. And the reason we went beyond the edge is so that there's no accidental chance that we're going to get a little sliver of white showing up. So our next step is going to be to take the rectangle tool and make sure, using those smart guides, we know that we're right on this edge, right on this edge. And you can see in that little box there, it tells me that it's 8.5 by 11, so that's great. I can even release my mouse, go over to Properties with it still selected, double check that I didn't move my mouse at the last minute and that it's still 8.5 by 11. Now we're going to take this box that we just made, and we're going to put cropping marks on that. So we go Effect, and then we go Crop Marks right there. And when we click, you'll see if we zoom in, you can now see there's crop marks in the corner, which will allow us to draw, well, actually cut right that little extra piece off that shouldn't be there. And actually that should go all the way to the bleed. Okay, so let me zoom back out again. And now I don't want this blue thing obviously to print. So what I need to do is make sure that it has a stroke of none and a fill of none. But you can see the crop marks still remain. Now the last step we need to do is make sure that this is going to, that all of it is going to print. So we have to go up to our next size. So I'm going to assume that the next size that we have to print on is 11 by 17 paper. It's always a good idea to make your artboard the same size paper that you're printing on. So I'm going to click on the artboard tool. I'm going to make sure that my artboard scales from this way over so it doesn't end up overlapping this document. So to do that, all I have to do is click somewhere along here in the transform panel, and now I'm going to enter in 11 tab 17, and there's my new document size. And then I'm going to just take this and move it so that it is all going to print. And so that is the workaround. You'll get a printout that looks exactly like this. Whoops, went in a little too far there. And then when you go to trim this, you would take your ruler, you would set it right here, and then you would cut from about here to about here. The reason you don't want to cut all the way through is you will lose those crop marks. And then you'll take your ruler and you'll align it with that crop mark and cut from about here to about here, and repeat 2 more times, and you will have something that is exactly 8.5 inches. There's no chance that a little bit of white will show up at the edge because you actually printed further than you needed to by 1/8 of an inch.